Hello viewers, welcome to you in Autonomous College. Today I am going to discuss about that is new concept that is known as handling date JSP concept. We know that we have different date formats. By using that type of date formats, we can easily formatting as well as we can easily set dates in our JSP part. Now we can discuss what are the different points are related to our topic. Let us focus on the slide. So in this slide already we have different outlines about the topic. First of all, we can discuss what are the different introductions are related to topic. Then we are learning what are the different ways through which you can getting the current date and time in our system. Then we are the different ways to compare our dates through our JSP part. Finally, we are getting what are the different type of date formattings available in our JSP part. First of all, we can discuss what are the different introductions are related to a topic. So here one of the most important advantages of using JSP is that you can use all the methods available in core Java, because you know that in a Java concept also we have different types of date formats. By using that date formats we can easily records as well as we can easily store different types of dates as well as in the form of seconds or hours, whatever we can say. Here we have different ways through which you can be extract some date formats through that is known as a package that is known as java.util package. Through that util package we can easily extract different types of date formats through a predefined date class, and that date class must be written, the first character should be capital. So here the date class which is used in our util package, by using that class we can easily invoke or we can easily extract some predefined dates as well as predefined times which is available in our system, so that the date class supports two constructors. The first constructor initializes the object with the current date and time, and in that moment we are always prefer a constructor which is named as date, and that always denoted with some parenthesis which is already displayed in this slide. So in this slide already we have that point that is known as date. So in that date point we have some, we can add some prefix in this section. So next we are learning how to use that date in our system. So here already we have mentioned that the following constructor accepts one arguments, and that one arguments always use some equals the number of milliseconds. So that have since midnight January 1, 1970 we have a date function. In that date function we can store its time in the form of milliseconds. We know that whenever user can set some predefined time according to its milliseconds or hours, whatever we can say. Next we are learning what are the different techniques we are using in our, that is the JSP part. Here once you have a date object available, you can call any of the following support methods to play with dates. So we have 6 type of methods which is already displayed in this slide. The first method named as boolean after. In that boolean after method means boolean is the one type of return type, and method named as after. In that after method we have a parameter, in that parameter we have a date, and that is a date object, and here we have a date is a predefined class. The first character should be written as capital. Then we have an object of that date class. By using that method we can returns true if the invoking date object contains a date that is later than the one specified by date, otherwise it returns false. So it is a general way through which you can be extract some true or false result through this after method. In the second method named as a before method, it is also returns boolean type. So it may returns true, otherwise false. Whenever it can returns true if the invoking date object contains a date that is earlier than the one specified by date, otherwise it returns false. If it is not specified in that format, then it can return a false, which is already explained in this method. The next third method named as a object, or you can say that object is a return type, and method named as clone. In that clone method is specially used to duplicates the invoking date object which is already mentioned in this slide. So whenever user want to make a similar date in their system, in that moment we can take that clone method. By using that clone method we can easily define what are the different types of dates which are already used in system, but still we can make it as a duplicate. So the next method named as a compare to method. In that compare to method can contain a parameter, and that parameter must be denoted in the form of date. So in that date format we can easily compare with the current date to mentioned assigned date. So here it compares the value of the invoking object with that of date, then return 0 if the value are equal. Always we can say that whenever user want to compare some date and times, in that moment we can say. So that compare to method, here we defined as a compare to method will contain a parameter that is known as the date type, which is specially used for comparing the value of the invoking object with that of date. Always we can say that if a user want to compare with the system date to user defined date, in that moment we can take this method, so that whenever it returns 0 if the value are equal, otherwise it returns a negative value if the invoking object is earlier than the date. So it returns a positive value if the invoking object is later than the date. So it is a general way through which you can be invoking, otherwise we can make it as a comparing in our system. So if a user want to comparing some types of system date to, and we can say that current date or assigned date, in that moment we can take this compare to method. Otherwise we can also have some two extra methods named as equals method. That equals method also takes a parameter named as a date, and that date is known as object type. In that method also returns a boolean type value, so it returns true if the invoking date object contains the same time and date as the one specified by the date, otherwise it returns false. If that system date is not equivalent with the defined date, in that moment it returns false. If it is equal, then it can return true, which is already defined in the slide, and that always returns a boolean type. Boolean type means true or false. Last but not least, here we have a method named as a getTime method. In that getTime method, just specially used to returns a number of milliseconds that have lapsed since January 1, 1970. If a user want to return a time or date, in that moment we can invoke this getTime method, and that getTime method easily extract the system date as well as system time with their year. So in this a general way through which you can invoking, which is already displayed in this slide. So these are some tables which contain some predefined methods to its description. So next we are going to discuss what are the different some current date and time which is already mentioned in this slide. So first of all, in this slide we have some codings, and by using that codings, that is known as the JSP codings, that JSP codings may save with .jsp format. This JSP format we have some codings like that is known as a page directive. In that page directive coding we have already mentioned how to use, like that is known as a package. In that package must be imported through a import attribute. With the help of that import attribute we can import two type of packages, or we can say three type of packages, which is already mentioned in this slide, that is known as java.io package, then java.util package, last but not last that is known as javax.sublet package. By using this import attribute we can easily import three type of packages in this program. Then we need to define HTML tag. In that HTML tag we can define heading section. In that heading section we have to define like a title. So in this title already we mentioned like how to define a title with the help of a title tag, which is already displayed in this slide. Display current date and time, which is written in this. So in this body section we can define some statements like that is known as a display current date and time. In that current date and time it is always written within your heading tag, and that is heading tag mentioned here h1. In that heading tag must be written within center tag. That means this part must be displayed in the web browser inside, and inside that section it must be in centered format. So in that tag we also have a scripted tag. In that scripted tag we can define some JSP format codings, and in that part we have defined a date object. In that, a date object is a part of a predefined date class. In that date class we must return as a date, and D should be capital, and we have an object named as a date DATE, that is the normal written. Instead of this date object we can write any type of variables, then equal to new date constructor. So in the next part we are defining out.print. In that section we must define a that is known as a format, that format is known as heading format, and heading format with the center. Then we can define a method named as a date.toString method, and it is written within plus symbol, because this two format means heading format. That time, or you can say date, must be displayed in a that is known as a bold and heading format. That's why it is written within H2. So we can close that method then with semicolon, then we can close like scriptlet tag, then we need to close your body tag, then finally we can close HTML tag. So it is a general way through which you can be executing it in our system. So if a user want to modify it, we can also write more than one statements inside this HTML tag. There is no problem which is available in that system. If a user want to design any other format, it is also possible, there is no problem, but the coding format should be same. If a user want to design its front end, there is no problem. Next we are going to discuss what are the different ways through which you can be getting the output in our web browser. Whenever user can execute this code through any NetBeans, and we know that each type of NetBeans must contain a web server, that may be Tomcat web server or Glassfish web server. In that web server, that current date.jsp program must be executed. At last it can show an output in our web browser. Looks like that. In that slide already we have that format, display current date and time, then we are showing a 1 month, and otherwise you can say there is a day, time, and each and every format which is displayed in our system. So that if a user want to change it, it is also possible. If a user want to change in different format, what are the different techniques we are using to changing each and every part of a system. Then if a user want to changing its predefined date and time according to their own ways, we need some different techniques. How to compare different type of dates in our system. As discussed in the previous section, you can use all the available Java methods in your JSP script. So in case of you need to compare two dates, consider the following methods you can use. You can use getTime method to obtain the number of milliseconds that have lapsed since the midnight. If a user want to design in different ways, it is also possible. If a user want to design this technique in a single format, it is also still possible. But one thing you must be remember, if a user is not aware about it, how to use this type of methods in their program, then it can be show some abnormal consequence in their web browser. So a user must be aware about it. So user can use the methods before method, after method, and equals method, because the 12th of the month becomes before the 18th. For example, new date, in that new date we can write some name, or we can say like parameter 99. Now here 99 is shows as a year, then we can write 2, and that 2 is denoted as a date, and 12 is denoted as like we can say month. So dot before, and in that before time we can also mentioning 99 to 18, whatever, it returns true. If a user want to design their date comparison, if both dates must be compared with each other. Suppose here we have date named as that is known as a 12, or we can say 2. In the 2, then we also have like 2, and if a date is equal, then we can getting the return true. If it is date are not equal in nature, then it returns false. So you can use the compare to method. By using that method, this method is defined by the comparable interface and implemented by the date format. But somehow a user must be aware about it, really how to use it. If a user not declare this type of user defined dates in their system, then it can show more than one type of errors, and that errors is a confusing in nature, which creates more of ambiguity. We know that what is the real meaning of ambiguity. In that, ambiguity means some confusion which is not fully cleared through that program. if that program is not clear in nature, then we can't say it is a good program. So if a user want to define each part of that program in a clear format, then it is easily recognizable to each and every part of their program. Next we are going to discuss how to formatting our date in JSP part. In that part we need to modify the current date to user defined date. First of all, we can use some paste directive tag. First paste directive tag must contain a import attribute. In that import attribute we can mention two packages named as IO package, which is already mentioned through double quote, java.io.star, comma java.util.star. We can end that double quote. Then we can close that paste directive. Then similarly we can also define this paste directive tag in same format with different packages. In that package we can define servlet package, then we can define text package. By using this fourth number in this program, next we can define our HTML tag. In that HTML tag we can contain two sections. One is a heading section, next one as a body section. In heading section we have a title. In the title section we can write a statement. In that statement named as display current date and time. In display current date and time, statement must be shows in their slide. So whenever your title is being ready in the heading section, next we need to open that body section. In that body section we can write some statement which is already displayed in this slide. Here we can display one statement named as a display current date and time in heading format, which is displayed in center of the web browser. So we can define some scripting elements. In that scripting elements contain some statements that is known as a JSP type statements, which is defined in that format named as date. Here date is a predefined class. We have an object that is known as a dNow. Instead of this dNow, you can declare any object name. There is d1, whatever you can declare, there is no problem. Then you can use equal to sign, then we can write that is a new keyword, then we can write the constructor named as a date. So we can close that semicolon. Next we can define an object, that object named as ft. ft is the which type of object? Simple date format object. Whenever user can declare this simple date format object, then we can use assignment operator like equal to, then we can write new keyword, simple date format. We want to display our date in this format, we can write within double quote as the parameter of this simple date format method, or we can say constructor, that is known as the e4y.m.d at hour, minute, second, double s, then a whatever you can say. Next we can use the out.print method. In that print method we can use object of this simple date format ft.format within parenthesis. Here format is a method. In that format we have a parameter, and that parameter is the object type parameter, and that object type parameter means dNow. That now this ft must be changed with dNow object. That means whatever user defined date and time is mentioned in this ft object, and that ft object automatically converted to system date and time, which is already displayed in our web browser. Whenever user can execute this method, according to that method we are getting a output in a web browser. So in that web browser we are getting some responses. In that responses which is already mentioned in a simple format. In this slide already discussed how to make date formatting by using simple date format, and that simple date format is a predefined class. That's why by using that predefined class we can easily format our system date to any type of date. Okay, finally thank you. If you have any type of doubt, please try to contact through YouTube comment. Have a nice day. Thank you so much.